Well, hey there, YouTube. PD2 Finger here. I kind of still got that sleep voice, so excuse me. So yeah, I did a pedal trade yesterday. I want to talk about that. My sun lamp died. It's called a Verilux, and it's supposed to help you with depression. So there's a shield. The light is kind of radioactive, I think. I think it exposes you. Caution: to reduce risk of fire, use only 36 watt type bulb. So this is the bulb. I looked up the bulb, and it is $30 for the cheapest bulb. Now this lamp, I found this at a Goodwill. I've seen a couple more of them. They were high priced. It's like maybe this was a fad and people bought them and didn't use it or didn't like it. Anyway, mine, the bulb started flickering when I put it on the high setting. This is what one of the lamps that I use to light my when I film. I have a Verilux on this side. So this is an LED bulb. It's a big round clear bulb that has long LED strips in it, 3 of those strips. And then, and all of this stuff again I get from Goodwill. So this is the new Verilux light. It's smaller. The shade is really intact. My shade on my old one was banged up. It had been opened so many times that it was floppy and kind of crooked. At some points it would be crooked. This is hard to get this off of here to see the lamp. I don't think I'm going to open it up. It's given me some grief and I don't feel like hassling with it. Anyway, I got this one, which this one has a little a toggle switch that there's IKEA design of a similar toggle switch. This is a little different. I think it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's the same. The IKEA toggle switch of the same design. I've had some of those that are not good. They'll turn into a jiggle switch. So yeah, I had saw this Verilux for $1.99 at another Goodwill and grabbed it. So that's something I would recommend for YouTubers as a light source, because then if you're consistently YouTubing, you're going to consistently get the benefit of using that sun lamp, which they're beneficial for you as far as keeping you from wintertime sadness, or what do they call that?
Seasonal affective disorder?
SAD, seasonal affective disorder, where you're not getting enough sunlight and it makes you depressed. So yeah, pretty cool. Somehow or another on my Facebook, all of a sudden there was images of some speakers for sale. It was Facebook Marketplace. I don't know what I did, if I bumped the computer or it fell and typed out Facebook Marketplace and hit enter, but I was like, what's this? The people are, I remembered, I knew Facebook had a thing where you could sell stuff. So I started using it. It's something. It's like people tend to kind of not really venture out on the internet. Like me, I'm subscribed to FreeCycle. I have a hot link to Craigslist. I have a hot link to Shop Goodwill, which is a Goodwill auction site. So if I need to get a deal on something, I have an eBay hot link, which everyone has that, but there's like 4 places I can go and look for used stuff fairly quickly. Guitar Center Used is another place I can look at. Although they have these shipping charges, and there's just a general charge where they charge you $15 to that the employee gets for the sale, which is like, if it's for me, I'm always buying items under $30, and you're going to charge me $5 or $15 additional fee for some guy to go and grab it off a shelf and put it in a box. That makes it so I'm not going to use Guitar Center Used. So yeah, I was checking it out. I typed in speakers. I'm always looking for speaker enclosures. I've got this pair of 12s here, and I'm not really happy with the boxes that they're in. So I was taking a look at that, and then of course I went and looked at pedals. And I found just the coolest post. It was a guy who had a competition with a friend of his, and they had all these rules. It was like, you couldn't spend more than $30. You could trade, you could throw in cash, but the maximum amount of cash had to be 15. And it was a pedal board competition. So this guy had just a ton of pedals listed, including some pedals I had never heard of, a boutique company. So I went out there, made a deal with the guy, and I picked up a noise gate. This is a pedal called a Mimic, M-I-M-I-Q. I think it is. There's a music note. M-I-M-I, music note, and then another musical note symbol there. But it's a noise gate. It's called The Noise. There's a hard and soft option, and then a threshold control. So the reviews on this were generally good. One guy said he had problem with the release. I did not have that problem. I got a Buying Baby Boom RV10. I guess Baby Boom is the series. This is the RV10, and this is a true bypass reverb pedal, which people really love this pedal. It's a cheap 3-mode Hall spring in Rome. There's an A-B switch. There's 2 knobs, a blend knob and a time knob. And then on the input you have stereo in and stereo out. And that secondary switch, which I don't know what it does, is labeled A and B. So I'm guessing you can set it on A and set up what you want the sound to be, and then switch it over to B and do the same and have 2 different sounds on A or B. I'm guessing that's how that works. Which is neat. You know, you could have it more dry on one side, but still have a little bit. So, and then it would like pan. You know, it would have that sense of movement. So the other pedal I got is a Boss TU2. It's a Boss tuner, white tuner. It has a power in and then of course the power out, and it's LEDs. It says it's a chromatic tuner. I thought it was had a floating needle. It doesn't have the floating needle, but the first one he brought out didn't really work. And I'm like, yeah, nice try. So I traded 2 pedals that I had done pedal demos for, that I had doubles of. I had 2 pedals in my collection that I had doubles. One of them was had an error in the finish, really, or like orange peel or something. And I sent the guy a PM saying, you know, I'm taking close-up pictures of this pedal, with a high quality macro lens for the demo, and this paint, the flaws in the paint is going to show up in the demo, which is fine with me. But if I were you, I can send you this thing back. He was like, oh, no, I'm so sorry. Here's a replacement. So the other one, I had done a demo for a guy, and he knew how much time I put into making a demo. So he sent me 2 units. And I mean, what can I say? A Boss pedal and then 2 Chinese ones that are highly rated. I think I did well with the trade. They work. I brought with a test amp. I just recently got a Mini Marshall MS2 and brought that with. Brought the battery stuff. I had 3 different power supplies: a 9-volt battery, a 10.5 volt battery, an 8.5 volt lithium ion pack, and then some test cables. I brought with a test oscillator, so I wouldn't have to hook up the guitar for everything. And was there for about 20 minutes talking to the guy. He recommended I get a hold of his boutique builder who has some really cool stuff. I don't want to say who it is. And I noticed the guy did have some demos. But he was like, hey, you should, if you do pedal demos, you should get a hold of this guy and do some demos for him. So I contacted him. I sent him a message. We'll see if that goes anywhere. I'd be surprised if it would. He already had people do some demos for him. So if I'm going to speak frankly, I think he should contact me, because the level of quality that I can offer is on a completely different plane than what he already has up. That being said, the amount of time that these people put in on the demos was fractional compared to what I would be putting in. So I'm not saying, well, I'm so much better at playing guitar. It's talking about how much time I would put in on it. Like physically, the aspect of how I make a guitar pedal demo is a completely different process than what most people do. And it has nothing to do with my skill level or I'm a good guitar player. It's the process of how I make the guitar pedal demo. It's just way more involved. It's writing a really good piece of music, recording it and mixing it really well, and then putting together an excellent video, adding a bunch of sound effects and visual effects to the video, and scrolling text. It's all stuff that just takes a lot of time in the editing process. So that's why I'm saying, yeah, I would highly advise him to make that choice. Anyway, really excited about this. My wife and I have started making music again in this area, just adjacent to where I sit here. And there's a long gap. I have my multi-effector here, and I was always unplugging and plugging it. So there's this switch box. It's a can I get this up into the camera for you? It's RCA, wired up with RCA cables. So I had to use some adapter cables, some splitting, and I know signal chain purists would just cringe at all the additional cables and adapter jacks and then just running your sound through that thing. But the purpose it serves, I've got a pair of amps behind me, a little tiny guitar amp that sounds really good, AC plug, and then a clock radio that has a lot more bass frequencies. That little amp is good, but there isn't any low end on it. So I made a custom splitter cable that splits the mono signal and doubles it for that clock radio, the Bluetooth stereo thing that's bassy sounding, and then the amp on the other side of a stereo plug. And when my wife and I are gonna play together, I have to unplug and plug all this stuff over here, to send my signal over to this mixer that sits in a different area. But it's only 10 feet away. So I put that switch box in for the output. I want to get another switch box. They have some that are square with a metal chassis, and what I would do is open that up, drill out some holes in it, and cut in some 1/4-inch jacks, and then wire it up. So instead of wire into the RCA jacks that are existing, so I could just use 1/4-inch cables at that point. So that's, I'm actually going to, when I get done with this video, I'm going to run up to Goodwill and see if that switch box is still there. Because I saw one and I didn't buy it. So the way that I have this set up here is I can hit that button and it'll send my signal to the mixer, or I hit another button and it sends it to these 2 amps. Now the problem is, right now I have a long cable going up to the tuner, going into the input of the Zoom, and then there's a cable coming out of the tuner going into my guitar. I tried running it, just taking an output of the mixer and running it up to the tuner, and like we could be like, shh, I'm going to tune, and my wife would turn her bass down. We would stop any drum beat, and then I would just tune through the mixer. And it didn't seem to respond, like the low E didn't really track. So I'm like, you know what, this thing is probably looking to see the impedance of a guitar pickup. So let me try just hitting the front of it and see how it performs. And it worked way better. So that's how I have it hooked up for now, which means if I'm going to play, what I normally do is reach over here, grab this guitar, hit this clicky-clacky switch, and then I can go through that Zoom in this amp. So that's how I write my music, is sitting here, noodling away, coming up with stuff. So ideally, if I can, the thing with that switch box would be I would need to bypass that chromatic tuner and that other cable. I would need a cable coming out of the Zoom into the switch box, and then have that rig with the tuner on one side, and then another cable, straight cable, coming up to this guitar. Because I actually use a different guitar when we play. So it would be this guitar would run up to the switch box, that other rig would run up to the switch box, and the switch box would run to the Zoom. And when I want to just play here, like if I'm going to write some music, I would hit 2 switches on 2 separate switch boxes, and that would route the input and the output exactly where it needs to go. So it's a lot of extraneous wiring and little adapt jacks and stuff, and it's not the best for the signal. But you know, I'm not doing any, like, this isn't hi-fi recording or anything. And I mean, to be honest with you, there's a buffer in that tuner pedal. So right there, I got that covered. That's set. Now, I need to get 2 90-degree connections, because I've got some, like, coming out where I should have. And what we did for the Boss tuner, like, I like to sit down on this couch, and where the tuner was, it's up at about eye level. So if you sat that tuner down, you couldn't see it. I would have to stand up every time I want to tune. So I tried flipping the tuner up and setting it down. Well, there's that screw. So the base that the thing sits on is a piece of 3/4 ply with legs. It's a stand that comes up with a monitor speaker underneath it. And underneath that is a power bank switcher. It's sitting on a wooden TV tray. So I drilled a large hole, and that Boss pedal can stand up with that screw knob that you unscrew to get in the battery compartment sits in the hole. Then in the back of the pedal, I made an L bracket out of some thick plumber's tape, and then we just put a fastener, pretty large size screw. So there's a L bracket holding up the bat up against it. And coming out, I've got one jack that's one jack is a 90. It looks like on the output, which is nice. The other one, it's a regular guitar, 1/4 inch, so it comes out kind of long. So I'm going to order some 90 connectors, which are about $1 each on eBay. They're not really cheap, but they're good quality connectors. And then when those come in, I think I have two of those I need to take care of. But as things go along, it's like I'll find some real long guitar cable at Goodwill, and then 2 weeks later, I find myself rewiring stuff, and I need a long cable. You know, so it's just weird how things just kind of appear at these Goodwill places for me. So I'm blessed. That pedal deal yesterday was awesome. We were up late. I also, would you mind handing me that pair of cans? I also got this. I looked them up. They were. Ooh, that's not right. Hey, how did that happen, Empty? It was a late night last night. So these are Sony. Huh?
Not like I was like, whoa, out of it.
Oh, those bongs you did. MDR XD200, 40 millimeter driver, Sony headphones for $5, which isn't a great price, but these will be what I'm wearing. I got that like TJ, like, oh, I gotta have one off, and I'm in the club. What is that? Ibiza, like an OD on ecstasy. So yeah, there's this EQ. I made this video about counterfeit op-amp chips, these NE5532 chips that were fake in this EQ that I built. And that thing, it was humming. So we had taken it apart and the ground for the input and the output were isolated. So if you put a continuity test, beep beep, you put that on the ground for the amp board, or like, let's say, the power ground coming in. All right, you clip a cable on there on your meter, and then you take the other probe and you touch it on the input ground. You don't get the music. You touch it on the output ground, you don't get the music. And this is the first circuit I ever saw that. Okay, and it was humming like loud. So what fixed that hum was, first off, I have a bunch of 2.1 mil DC connectors, like power cables. They're like 4-foot cables cut from these Belkin boxes I buy that have the big sealed lead acid batteries, which we got one of those yesterday that was 12.5 volts. So that's always good getting those for the outdoor scene. Anyway, we unplugged the power supply from both the headphone amp and this EQ, because I'm not sure which one of these power supplies is humming. But one of them, I think it's just a power supply that's not designed for music. So it doesn't have the proper filtering, so there's 60 cycle leakage into this device. And that's why it's humming, was my theory. So we plugged in these cables cut off a Belkin, and then I had the Belkin battery, which is 12 volt. So we used some jumper test probe, or clippies I call them. They're an alligator clip, yellow wire. Clip it onto this battery, and the thing comes on, and it's still humming. So we got a 9 volt battery, did the same thing with the clips and the cable, and bypassed the power supply for the headphone amp. So I'm like, one of these power supplies is making this setup hum. And it was still humming. So then I opened up the lid on the EQ and started chasing that down, and I found that if I grounded the input jack and the output jack just between themselves, but did not connect that wire to actual ground, because if I did that, it would shut the circuit down, okay? Because it's a floating ground, output and input. But if I grounded the input and output together, it completely eliminated the hum, and the EQ sounded great. So we did that. We put it all back together, and Okay. And then the next day, yesterday, we were doing all this, and the hub's back. Guess what it was? It was the power supply. Can you believe it? But that's my life. So, yeah, I have this JBL. It's 13.7 volts, 5 amp. It's for a powered speaker. It's a nice brick power supply that has, or block, that has a pigtail AC cord and then a nice long thick cable for this old, really nice JBL set of speakers that has 2 inputs and a sub output. I really like that. We used it on the patio to do our backing tracks, and the cops came. So, anyway, they're like monitor speakers, you know. I really didn't want to use. We tested it with that, and there was no hum. Obviously, this power supply is made for speakers. So, I went in my 9 volt stash, even though this is 12, and I found something that was 12.27 volts when I had tested it. So, I used that. 600 milliamp. And of course, it was silent. It was in my collection of audio power supplies, and I typically don't have anything that hums in there. So that setup is kind of like, I was looking at it today thinking, is there an effect send on the mixer? Could I set this reverb up, the stereo, and then have a reverb on the mix? There isn't, but there's a 2-track. So couldn't I just take the stereo master mix and run it into here and have that come back in as 2-track? I suppose I could. So maybe I'll try that and see if I want to add reverb to our master mix. What I would really like to do with this is have a rack mount EQ in here, like underneath the power switcher or above it maybe, and then run like a nice EQ. So maybe one day we'll do that, and then I just gotta see. I'm so like that EQ that had the counterfeit chips and the grounding issue, and it kept humming. I'm like, I so don't trust that and think it's noisy. I'm still like, that thing's no good. Honestly, I think now I've got it nailed down. So, wish me luck on finding that power supply. Kathy and I are going to take a run up to the Goodwill. Huh?
Maybe you'll go yourself.
Maybe I'll go myself.
Oh, never mind. Well, yeah, you better go now.
Yeah, gotta run, guys. See you next time, and peace.